Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading back, way back, to the late Cretaceous in Canada.
That's right.
We're going to be digging into a pretty interesting dinosaur, Boreonykus.
Mm-hmm. The northern claw.
Exactly. And our mission, really, is to figure out what finding this Boreonykus tells us about, well, dinosaur life up there back then. We're focusing on the science, the discovery, how it was classified.
And it's quite a story. It really shows how science works, how our understanding changes.
Yeah, the journey it's taken in the scientific literature is pretty fascinating.
It is. And it's a great reminder that even, tiny fragments, bits and pieces, can completely reshape how we see these ancient worlds.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Where did this all kick off? The sources say the first bits were actually found back in the 80s.
Yeah, the 1980s,
Yeah.
long before it had a proper name. It was at the Pipestone Creek site in Alberta.
And wasn't that site famous for something else entirely? Like, they weren't even looking for raptors.
Exactly. That's often how these things happen. They were excavating this huge bone bed of Pecorinosaurus lacusti, that's a big-horned dinosaur.
Wow.
And amongst all those huge bones, they started finding these smaller dromaeosaurid fragments.
So, sort of an accidental discovery then?
Pretty much. And, a dromaeosaurid, for anyone listening, that's the group that includes things like Velociraptor.
Right, yeah.
But these initial fragments, they weren't immediately flagged as something totally new. Back in 2001, actually, they were tentatively assigned to Saurornitholists.
Another known raptor from the area.
Yeah, exactly. It shows you the detective work involved, you've got these incomplete bits, and you're trying to figure out if they match something known or if you have something novel. It takes meticulous comparison.
Okay, so fast forward. When does it actually get its name?
That happened quite a bit later, in 2015. Phil Bell and Philip John Curry, they're the ones who formally described and named it Boreonykus.
And the name, Northern Claw, Boreonykus. Very cool. Tells you where it's from.
Definitely grounds it in Canada. And the species name, Certicorum, that actually honors the Certec Oil Company.
Oh, really? Why them?
They provided financial support for the Pipestone Creek work. So it's a nod to that collaboration.
That's interesting. A bit of modern support helping uncover ancient life.
Absolutely. And the key piece of evidence, the thing that really defines Boreonykus, is what we call the holotype.
The holotype, that's
Yeah.
like the main reference specimen, the standard.
Precisely. It's the fossil that officially carries the name. For Boreonykus, it's a right frontal bone that's part of the skull roof. Its official number is TMP 1989.055.00047.
TMP, meaning it's at the Royal Tyrrell Museum.
Correct, in Alberta. And this specific bone, it came from the Wapiti Formation. Geologically, that's dated pretty precisely to the late Companion Age, about 73.27 million years ago, give or take a bit.
Wow, that's specific. So one bone tells us when it lived.
It gives us a really solid anchor point in time, yeah.
Now, wasn't it just that one frontal bone? I thought there were other bits and pieces found, too.
There were. They found some other fragments nearby, things like 14 loose teeth, a tail vertebra, even a claw from the hand.
Ooh, and the famous foot claw, the sickle claw.
And a sickle claw, yes.
Yeah.
UALVP 53597 is the hand claw. TMP 1986.055.0184.1 is the foot claw. The thinking is these might belong to the same individual as the frontal bone, or at least the same species from the same spot.
Okay, so how much more does that tell us? Having teeth and claws and vertebrae.
Well, while the frontal bone gives us the unique diagnostic feature, these other bits help flesh out the picture. The teeth tell us about diet. The claws obviously hint at its predatory nature, like other raptors.
Right, the sickle claw especially.
Exactly. And the vertebra gives clues about the tail structure. Finding these associated parts, it just makes the reconstruction less speculative. You get a better sense of the whole animal.
Let's get back to that unique feature you mentioned on the frontal bone. The force calls it an autapomorphy.
Autapomorphy, yeah. Fancy word. But it just means a unique, derived trait. Something distinctive that only this particular species has, setting it apart from its close relatives.
Like a fingerprint?
Kind of, yeah. For Boreonykus, it's about these ridges on the top of the skull near where some jaw muscles would attach, around openings called the supratemporal fenestrae.
Okay.
The ridges bordering the front of those openings meet at a really sharp angle, specifically about 55 degrees, and they point backwards. That specific shape and angle is the key identifier.
And that single, seemingly small detail is enough to say, this is a new species.
In this case, yes. Because it's a consistent anatomical feature not seen in other known dromaeosaurids. It's these unique traits that help paleontologists map out the dinosaur family tree, identifying distinct evolutionary branches. It tells us Boreonykus was on its own evolutionary path.
So we have this unique northern raptor. Where did Bill and Curry initially think it fit in the bigger Dromaeosaur family picture?
Their 2015 paper placed it within the Velociraptorini. That's the subfamily, including, Velociraptor itself.
Okay, so related to the famous Velociraptor, what did that imply?
Well, finding a velociraptorine in North America was potentially quite significant. It suggested maybe this group wasn't just restricted to Asia, as many thought. It hinted at something called faunal provincialism.
Meaning, like, different regions having their own distinct sets of dinosaurs.
Sort of, yeah. Or maybe rapid species turnover. It suggested that perhaps North America had its own unique velociraptorines evolving, maybe distinct from the Asian ones. It opened up questions about how these animals spread and evolved across the globe back then.
That sounds like a pretty big shift in thinking.
It was definitely an intriguing possibility based on that initial analysis. But, as often happens in science,
The story changed.
the story evolved, yeah. More recent research, specifically mentioned as a 2021 study in our source material, took another look.
What do they find?
This newer analysis, likely incorporating more fossil data and refined techniques, actually reclassified Boreonykus. It moved it out of the Velociraptorinae and placed it within the Dromaeosaurinae instead.
Okay, wait, so another subfamily of dromaeosaurids, but not the Velociraptor group.
Exactly. Dromaeosaurinae includes dinosaurs like Dromaeosaurus and Utahraptor. The current thinking, based on this reevaluation, is that true Velociraptorina might have been restricted to Asia after all.
Huh. So Boreonykus is still a raptor, still a dromaeosaurid, but maybe more closely related to Dromaeosaurus than Velociraptor.
That seems to be the current consensus, yes. It shows how interpretations can shift as we find more evidence and reanalyze existing fossils. The features of Boreonykus, when looked at in a broader context, seem to align it more closely with the Dromaeosaurians.
It really highlights how science isn't static, it refines itself.
Constantly. What seemed like evidence for North American velociraptorines now looks more like evidence for the diversity within the other major raptor subfamily, the Dromaeosaurians, in North America.
So let's sort of zoom out. What does Boreonykus, this whole story, tell us about that late Cretaceous world in Canada specifically?
Well, it adds another piece to the puzzle of that ecosystem. We know Pachyrhinosaurus was there in huge numbers.
The big horned dinosaur it was found with.
Right. And now we know Boreonykus was there too, a likely predator. Maybe preying on smaller animals or even young Pachyrhinosaurs, who knows? It shows us the diversity of predators sharing that environment.
Even from just these fragments.
Even from fragments, it emphasizes that every fossil, no matter how incomplete, adds crucial data. Boreonykus gives us a snapshot of life in Western Canada around 73 million years ago, fairly close to the end of the line for the non-avian dinosaurs. It helps us build a picture of the biodiversity, the food webs.
Just before the big extinction event.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's quickly recap then. Boreonykus, the northern claw from Canada, discovered kind of accidentally alongside Pachyrhinosaurus fossils.
Fragments found in the 80s.
Formally named in 2015, based mainly on that unique ridge angle on its frontal bone.
That autapomorphy, yeah.
And its place in the family tree has shifted first thought to be a Velociraptor relative, now considered a Dromaeosaurine.
Which refines our understanding of how these raptor groups were spread out across the world.
It's fascinating stuff, the whole process.
It really is. From those scattered bones in a drawer, essentially, to a named species that makes us rethink parts of the dinosaur family tree. It's a perfect example of the scientific process in action observation, hypothesis, testing, revision.
Yeah, makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is still locked away in those Canadian rocks?
Oh, absolutely. There are undoubtedly countless discoveries still waiting to be made.
Every new find could potentially shift our understanding again. And I guess the Boreonykus story really drives home that point science is this ongoing journey, constantly redrawing the map of the ancient past based on the clues we uncover.
Well said. It's a continuous exploration.